I want revenge. I want them to know death is coming, and there is nothing they can do to stop it. Rambo Last Blood is directed by Adrian Grunberg and starring Sylvester Stallone, Vega, and Yvette Monreal. Before I go any further, I just want to say there will not be any plot spoilers in this review. This is the fifth film in the Rambo franchise. It has been 11 years since the last film in the franchise, which was simply titled Rambo. And once again, this film is centered around the character of John Rambo. This time, he is living a quiet and quaint life on a family farm in New Mexico. But when one day someone close to him gets kidnapped, he has to once again spring into action to rescue them and perhaps go on a revenge spree. This is one of the iconic characters in the career of one Sylvester Stallone, the other one being Rocky Balboa, and Rambo is a much different character than Rocky Balboa. He's much more quiet, he's more of a blunt character, and he's very much an action-packed character throughout his franchise, and this film is rather different when it comes to what I think most people are expecting from a Rambo film. Like I said, his previous films are very much action-packed, maybe not so much the first one, which is more of a social commentary and political commentary on the Vietnam War and veterans and PTSD, but the other films in the franchise have been action-packed, awesome movies for people who love them. This film tries to be something different. We now have an older Rambo who is not the same gung-ho guy he used to be. He's much more quiet, he's much more reserved, and he's trying to keep everything under wraps when it comes to his violent tendencies. We see that he takes medication now in this film that pretty much counteract those tendencies, but once he has to go back to his tendencies, we see that he is someone who's struggling with his past, struggling with an existential crisis, and that's when I feel like this film has most of its positive attributes, is when it is striving to deal with those things. For the most part, this movie is very rather one-note, it's very surface level, it's a very blunt and kind of narrowly focused movie, but when it tries to go for those more in-depth things, when it comes to the character of John Rambo, I think that that's when the film becomes more interesting to me. Unfortunately, the film doesn't spend enough time on those things to fully develop them and to fully explore them to what I think could have been a more interesting route than what we got in this movie. This film constantly battles with itself, with being a more character-driven, existential, contemplative film and being that action genre film that we all know Rambo to be. Doing so, the film is very much a mixed bag for me. I don't think it's as bad a film as a lot of people have said it is, but there are a lot of problems with it. But I'll stick with the positives for now. I think Sylvester Stallone is really good in this film. He slips back into this Rambo character almost seamlessly. He gets a lot more dialogue here to work with than I think we've ever seen before, but he's still able to kick some serious ass. The third act of this movie is pure John Rambo, action-packed, violence and kind of that awesomeness that a lot of people like to see. Now, if you are someone who is squeamish when it comes to violence and blood and the kind of over-the-topness of that type of thing, this is probably not going to be the movie for you because similar to the last film, the violence is very much over the top. It's very graphic. It's almost so graphic to the point where I found it kind of comedic at some points, but maybe that's just my kind of sick humor. I will also say Paz Vega is very good in this film, and the back and forth that she has with John Rambo I thought was really good. Unfortunately, her character didn't seem to have a full arc to her. It didn't seem to have a lot of things for her to do, and it also didn't seem that they kind of completed what her character was going to do. The film kind of just lets it dissipate into nothing, which is really unfortunate because I thought where they were going with her character was very interesting. I will also say Adrian Grunberg has some good qualities when it comes to direction in this film. The action sequences towards the end of the film I thought were very good and very well done. Unfortunately, when it comes to some of the other aspects of the film, I thought were pretty shoddy. When it comes to kind of the editing and the plot flow of this film, it was really not dragging at times, but it felt a little off to me. This film is not long. I think the runtime is about 88 minutes with credits, so you can assume that the film is much shorter in length than that, and it felt short. It felt incomplete in many of its aspects, but it also felt like it dragged a little bit as well. It's a very odd feeling. The screenplay itself is not very good in general. Some of the dialogue isn't great. The story itself is very plain to me and very safe. It doesn't feel quite like a film with a lot of gravitas when it comes to the John Rambo character, especially when it comes to his last film. I would have liked to have seen a more interesting plot with this movie. Also, there is something that a lot of people have brought up in many of their reviews when it comes to the race depiction aspect of this movie. This film does deal with Mexican sex traffickers and things like that, and those characters, the way they are portrayed on screen is very negative, as one would assume sex traffickers would be portrayed. The fact that they are Mexican is rather problematic, because the only Mexican representation you really see in this movie are bad people in bad areas of Mexico. It's a very blunt, very negative political thing that I think a lot of people are going to bring up, because you can glean a lot of negative aspects from that in this movie. But when it comes to me, I don't think the film is purposely saying negative things about the Mexican culture, about Mexico in general, but one can make the argument that they are. So with all that being said, I'm going to give this film a 3 out of 5 stars. John Rambo is a character that has a very long, iconic legacy that I think this film strives to add another formidable chapter in it. Unfortunately for me, it doesn't quite do so in a really positive way. Also, I would say that Sylvester Stallone is very good in this film. Paz Vega is very good in this film. The plot for me is rather plain and rather one note, and it's kind of very unevenly directed. But if you are a Rambo fan and you're going to this movie with lowered expectations or different expectations because it's a Rambo film and you're not expecting too much for it, I think you're going to like it overall. Unfortunately, when it comes to certain objectivity with it that I have to take as a reviewer, it's a bit of a mixed bag. That has been my review of Rambo Last Blood. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.